These two men were credited with the scientific discovery that chromosomes determined whether your baby was born male or female. They were given public recognition. They were invited to speak at conferences about their discoveries. They went down in scientific history. But it was all a lie. The discovery wasn't made by them. The discovery was made by this woman, Nettie Maria Stevens. Why were they trying to erase her from scientific history? And why, even in death, were they unable to admit that she was the one who made the discovery? Did you know that Aristotle believed that the sex of a baby was determined by the temperature of the father during conception? He used to tell older men that if they wanted a boy, they should conceive in the summer, and if they wanted a girl, they should conceive in the winter. And then later on, it was widely believed in 19th century Europe that the sex of a baby was determined by nutrition. Good nutrition equaled girl, bad nutrition equaled boy. Obviously, we have figured out that neither of those are true. It was just some guy saying some stuff and people went, yeah, okay, that's believable. Well, now we know that the determining factor is chromosomes. But how do we know for sure? Aristotle thought he was right, and 19th century Europeans thought that their theory was right. So how do we know the truth? The year was 1904 at the Carnegie Institute of Washington. Nettie Maria Stevens was just awarded a research assistantship. She received recommendation letters from her previous schooling, from the head of biology, Edmund Beecher Wilson, and also an advisor at the school, Thomas Hunt Morgan. She had just applied for funding to research heredity. There were tons of theories that were out around this time, but she just felt that they were incomplete, so she wanted to get to the bottom of this chromosome business. So she gets the funding. She starts examining the differences between chromosome sets in female and male aphids. She noted her findings, wrote a paper, and she won $1,000 for Best Scientific Paper Written by a Woman. Her work was published by the Carnegie Institute of Washington in the two-part monologue called The Spermatogenesis. She was the first American woman to be recognized for her contribution to science. But remember, this is the early 1900s. They couldn't give her too much credit. First, she's making scientific discoveries. Next, she'll be asking to wear pants or bow. At first, when she presented her findings, they were not appreciated or believed, because after all, she's a woman. What does she know about science? You remember the head of biology at her old school, Mr. Edmund Beecher Wilson? He, at the same time, happened to be writing a very similar paper. And Nettie trusted and respected his opinion, so she showed him her findings before she published it, because what could go wrong from that? After reading over her paper and seeing the results of her studies, he revised his own paper and resubmitted it. Which is really crazy because the results of his study came back more inaccurate because he only studied the sperm cells and not the egg cells, because he claimed that the egg cells were too fatty for his staining technique that he used to study the cells, so he only studied the sperm cells. And if he only studied the sperm cells, how could he come to the same conclusions as Nettie? Well, good old Edmund did not forget to credit Nettie. He put a tiny little footnote at the bottom of his paper where he let people know that Nettie did make this discovery. A little tiny footnote at the bottom of his paper. And one more crazy coincidence. Mr. Thomas Hunt Morgan was also doing a paper about something similar. In his research, he disagreed with both Nettie and Edmund, though his research was a little bit less complete than Nettie's. But 1905. So obviously Mr. Thomas Hunt Morgan is credited with this discovery. Mr. Thomas Hunt Morgan and Mr. Edmund Beecher Wilson were invited to numerous conferences to speak about their discoveries and findings. Notice how I said Thomas and Edmund and not Nettie. Nettie wrote many other scientific papers in her lifetime, but to add insult to insult to insult to injury, when she died of ovarian cancer, Mr. Thomas Hunt Morgan decided he was going to write an obituary in the Journal of Science to pay his respects. Now, in this obituary, he said that Miss Stevens shared in a discovery of importance. And then he also claimed that Nettie confirmed a hypothesis that the X chromosome was the determining chromosome, which, if you've been paying attention, is incorrect and is the opposite of her findings. But But Mr. Morgan couldn't be bothered with those silly details. He had speaking engagements to attend. He then later wrote a textbook where he again took full credit for this discovery, along with Mr. Wilson. And inside the textbook, he describes the results of Nettie Stevens' research in detail, and still does not mention her name one time in that textbook. But it's okay, because she got a little footnote in Mr. Wilson's research paper. So they did her dirty in life and in death. So I'm here to set the record straight and let people know who the real brains behind the operation was. And that was Nettie Maria Stevens. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what else you want to see in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.